the export of rare earths. Is this the most dangerous blow that China has launched in its vital confrontation with the US? When gold can still be replaced, but rare earth is almost impossible, Beijing is holding the throat of the entire Western high-tech industry. Will Washington be able to counterattack in time, or will he be dragged into an unequal game? This silent war could shake the entire global supply chain. No need for bombs to fall or bullets to explode. Just a few words of war between Washington and Beijing are enough to make the whole world reel. The price of gold kept climbing, increasing hundreds of dollars per ounce in just a few months. A real fever that no one dared to underestimate. People rushed to buy gold as if tomorrow was the end of the world. Even though the economy in many places is recovering after the pandemic, confidence in the financial market is in free fall. Reason? It's not because of a lack of gold or a sudden increase in demand, but because the world's two largest powers are starting to tease each other with commercial tricks. U.S. China tensions escalate every day. Investors were scared, ran away from stocks, and sold out U.S. bonds. Gold became the only shelter in the midst of the storm of instability. No one can be sure whether tomorrow there will be any global supply chain operating smoothly or not. What's worse, financial experts, those considered leading the way, are suspected of playing a different game. Vague forecasts, hidden comments, are they just a trap to inflate gold prices? While they profit, the risk falls on the shoulders of people who are desperate to find a safe place to keep their assets. If this is the consequence of aggressive policies coming from a White House that does not know how to back down, then the cost is clear: chaos, loss of confidence, and a market that is increasingly difficult to control. When Trump decided to impose 145% tariffs on Chinese goods, he seemed to think that the US could easily win. But China is not an opponent that can be easily conquered. Immediately, Beijing counterattacked strongly, not even hesitating to declare, even if the US increases tariffs by 2,000%, we don't care at all. With this statement, China sent a clear, unmistakable message. They no longer want to continue trading the way America wants. They clearly understood the nature of this trade war and did not fall into the media trap that the US had set. The important thing is, China knows it possesses a very powerful card that can force the US to make concessions. With both the US and China refusing to give in, this war is no longer just about trade, but a global power and strategy struggle. Who will be the first to step back? That question still has no answer. As the US-China confrontation escalates, China has not one but two extremely powerful strategic cards to resist pressure from Washington. US government bonds are the first card. China is a major creditor of the US, holding trillions of dollars. If China decides to sell off this huge amount of bonds, the dollar will seriously depreciate, leading to a weakening of the US economy and reducing the reputation of the greenback globally. A blow to confidence in the US dollar could rattle global finances. The second card is rare earths, strategic materials that the US cannot lack if it wants to maintain its defense strength. Rare earths are the soul of modern technology, from permanent magnets, electronics, radar, and missile systems to electric vehicles. If China stops supplying rare earths, the US will have difficulty producing high-tech weapons, and its national self-defense ability will be seriously threatened. These two cards not only threaten the US economy, but can also weaken the military power of this superpower. Will the US find a way to cope? Although the name rare earth suggests rarity and difficulty to obtain, the reality is far different. Countries around the world, including Vietnam, possess huge reserves of rare earths. Vietnam is second only to China. However, the problem is not whether there are rare earths or not, but the ability to exploit and process them effectively. This is the key point that makes China gain the advantage. Vietnam and some other countries have enough resources but do not have sufficiently advanced processing and separation technology to fully exploit rare earths. Meanwhile, the West, despite possessing modern technology, faces great difficulties in implementing exploitation because of concerns about environmental pollution. Environmental protection regulations in the US and Europe are very strict, and rare earth processing causes heavy pollution, affecting human health and the surrounding ecosystem. China does not have this problem. The country is willing to make environmental trade-offs to gain a competitive advantage in the rare earth industry. Rare earth mining areas in China are frequently criticized for their pollution levels and negative impact on the environment. But it is thanks to this determination that China maintains its monopoly in this field. Not only that, Western environmental protection policies make the cost of mining and processing rare earths in these countries too high, leading to businesses being unable to maintain operations and giving up. Meanwhile, China can supply rare earths at much cheaper prices, creating a clear difference. Therefore, China not only maintains its monopoly position, but also puts Western countries in a difficult position to compete. And with the importance of rare earths to high technology, defense, and industrial development, China holds an extremely powerful strategic card. China's rise in the rare earth industry is a calculated long-term strategy that began in the 1985s. Realizing the immense potential of rare earths, China introduced tax refund policies to encourage extensive mining. In 1992, Deng Xiaoping famously declared, "The Middle East has oil, China has rare earths," marking a turning point in how China viewed these resources as both valuable and strategic. Meanwhile, the U.S., once a leader in the industry, made a critical mistake by transferring mining technology to China, underestimating the dangers of empowering its competitor. China quickly absorbed and advanced this technology, becoming the dominant force in rare earths. Today, the U.S. is sidelined, dependent on China for processing and production, with China now holding both the resources and the global market power, leaving other countries reliant on it for high-tech and strategic manufacturing. Donald Trump is always well aware that the U.S. is dependent on China in the field of rare earths. But while he criticized this dependence, he could not find a real solution to solve the problem. It can be said that America's current situation is like a talented cook who has to stir-fry water spinach in a strange place. The U.S. has the formula in theory, but cannot implement it on its own because of the lack of necessary infrastructure and technology. Throughout his term, Trump has continuously called for the U.S. to become self-sufficient in production and reduce dependence on China. However, the problem is not simple. Although aware of the problem, Mr. Trump cannot change the long-term habits of the American people. They are used to living in convenience and are not willing to trade their living environment for autonomy in the rare earth industry. The bigger problem is that if China suddenly bans the export of rare earths, the U.S. will fall into a death situation in the production of military and high-tech equipment. Disrupted supply chains will prevent the U.S. from reacting in time, especially in war situations, when weapons production needs to be quick and timely. Meanwhile, China can use this policy as a powerful strategic card, forcing the U.S. to face defeat in this confrontation. To rise and become the boss in the rare earth industry, China had to pay an extremely expensive price. Behind this success is a not very bright story about environmental pollution. From mining areas such as Inner Mongolia or Jiangxi, cancer villages began to appear where people had to live in unimaginable conditions. The land, water, and air are poisoned, turning these places into dead zones full of threats to human health. Sludge from rare earth mining contains heavy metals and radioactive substances such as thorium, which not only pollute the environment but can also cause deadly diseases for those who have to live in the area. Although the China knows clearly about the harmful level and serious consequences of these activities, it cannot ignore the fact that, in the battle for global position, sometimes everything has to be traded off. Trump has talked about making America great again, but to achieve that, the U.S. may have to reconsider China's decisions, especially about the huge costs they have to pay in the process of dominating the rare earth industry. When the U.S. realized that it could no longer depend on China for rare earth mining, Trump was determined to come up with an alternative. However, the truth is not as easy as he thought. Mining rare earths in the U.S. is a huge challenge, not only because the mining areas are limited, but also because of strong opposition from the people. American society, which always focuses on environmental protection and quality of life, is not used to facing the serious consequences caused by the rare earth mining industry. Having to accept those dangers is clearly unacceptable to the people. At that time, Trump began aiming for another solution, looking for a new disciple, a country that could replace China in the rare earth supply chain. And Ukraine, with its abundant rare earth resources, has become an attractive choice. However, even though Ukraine possesses this valuable resource, much of the region rich in rare earths has fallen into Russian hands. This forces the U.S. to negotiate with Russia, which is not easy, especially when Russia is leaning towards China. The closer it gets, the more awkward a situation America falls into, having to face new dependence on an unfriendly country. Trump's big plan once again encountered complex and difficult realities. America, for a long time, has been accustomed to bullying and enjoyment without having to engage in dirty and dangerous work. The U.S. is always ready to push jobs that pollute the environment and are harmful to people to other countries. China, with its wisdom and determination, has quietly done all the things that America does not want to get involved with. And now, as China has grown stronger, America is beginning to realize its serious dependence on rare earths and other resources that China controls. The real problem comes when China decides to stop exporting or simply cut off the supply chain. At that time, America will have to pay a heavy price for the habit of eating above other people's heads without thinking about the long-term consequences. The supply chain will completely collapse, and the U.S. economy will fall into crisis with no time to react. China has crept into every corner of life, making it difficult to escape their influence. Seemingly ordinary items, clothes, shampoo, masks, or everyday items, all carry a common mark: made in China. We can live without Google and Facebook, but without Chinese products, everything will fall apart. These small items not only exist in stores but also penetrate all economic activities, serving as the basis for global transactions. Even business management software like Sapo cannot lack products from China. In fact, it is Chinese merchants who have created great motivation to help these software survive and develop. China, with its pragmatic soft power strategy, does not need strong propaganda, but simply makes the whole world rely on its goods, thereby building an irreversible dependence. China does not need to show off, but quietly holds important links in the global supply chain, causing the whole world to reconsider. Trump's self-cutting attacks may cost America dearly, not China. In the rare earth game, only those who are patient enough to endure the dirt and pain can win. As for the Trump administration, they have been too slow, confused, and lacking long-term vision to deal with a chess position that China skillfully set up decades ago.